The BBC's strategy for Eurovision over the past several years has been as consistent as the British weather. While some would argue that rather than constantly chopping and changing, they should just pick one and stick to it, others see this experimentation as a way to determine what works best. The utterly abysmal result in 2021 forced the BBC to tear up the rulebook and start over. More control was handed over to the delegation, who subsequently took on people with greater experience and contacts in the music industry in the form of tap music. Sam Ryder's second-place finish and unprecedented commercial success certainly indicated that the BBC had finally struck gold, or silver to be more precise. Predictably, tap got involved again for 2023, fueling the idea that the UK was back in the game as a serious contender once again. After months of wild speculation over who the UK representative was, Mae Muller was finally announced as the home girl with her catchy up-tempo pop number, I Wrote a Song. The response in the fandom was mixed. Some branded it generic and condemned it to the bottom 5, while others praised its British flavour, catchiness and sass and pointed out that we would have killed to have had an entry like this only a few years earlier. The song was doing well in fan polls and streaming figures, however concerns were raised with Mae's live performances, in which she was clearly struggling vocally. Rehearsals were the final nail in the coffin as far as the UK's chances were concerned. While Mae was clearly having fun on stage and the visuals were pretty decent, numerous problems persisted. Her vocals weren't as powerful as was needed, and the backing vocals were somehow totally messed up in the final chorus. Add in the running order and other girl bumps which were arguably better executed, and the dark cloud of last place loomed. In the end, the UK finished second to last with 24 points. However, it wasn't all bad news. I Wrote a Song went on to become Mae's first UK top 10 single, and the usual political conspiracy theories failed to materialise. Official charts describe Mae as undoubtedly one of the most promising female talents in pop right now. Plus, she's performing at gigs and festivals throughout the summer, headlining a tour later this year, and releasing her debut album in September. So, what about 2024? Well, the most obvious answer would be to just give Ben Mawson and Ed Millett from Tap Music a call and ask them to sign on the dotted line, please. However, it may not be all that simple. In an interview with Music Week back in March, Mawson hinted that 2023 may be the end of the road for them, but later in the same interview, he also seemed to leave the door open for 2024. We should find out one way or the other by the autumn. But what if they don't? Well, whatever the BBC decide to do next, one thing that is fairly certain is that they will want to continue involving record labels, as it means that the act can be properly supported and promoted both during and after Eurovision, as well as having a bigger budget for things like staging. Continuing with smaller but established artists and using Eurovision to catapult them into the mainstream is clearly a strategy that works, and it would be mad to deviate from it. But, and here comes the controversial bit, maybe there should be the involvement of a national final. Needless to say, recent UK national finals don't have the best of reputations within the Eurovision fandom. The offering was as appetizing as a bowl of cold soup on a chilly winter's day. Edible, but hardly satisfactory. So obviously we're not talking about a You Decide 2.0 here. Look at some of Europe's most successful national selections, like Spain's Benidorm Fest, Finland's UMK, Italy's San Remo, and the Swedish behemoth that is the Melody Festivalen. They feature established artists with credible songs, and the shows have a reputation beyond Eurovision. Eurovision is not necessarily the sole purpose of the shows. In fact, Eurovision is not even in the title. Take a British parallel such as Britain's Got Talent. As well as a £250,000 prize, the winner bags a coveted slot on the Royal Variety Performance. But the sole purpose of Britain's Got Talent is not to fill 10 minutes of entertainment for the royal family. If for whatever unlikely reason the Royal Variety Performance was to end, Britain's Got Talent would likely still continue nevertheless. And so with this hypothetical UK national final. While the winner obviously gets to go to Eurovision, it should be about more than that. It shouldn't matter whether you come first or fifth. This show can be used as an opportunity to showcase new and emerging artists to the UK audience, introduce people to their music, and gain new fans. We don't need anything on the scale of Melody Festivalen, and nor is it at all likely that the BBC would do as such. That kind of show seems more up ITV Street, and it's difficult to fathom why in this country, where there's such a strong and varied music market, they haven't already done so. Instead, they could turn to Finland's UMK for inspiration. All Finland has are 7 songs, but they are 7 quality songs by competent artists. The contest generates hype domestically and abroad, and even acts that don't win still achieve commercial success. To sum it up, a UK national final could have, say, 6 to 8 quality acts, so bland generic songs reminding us that we can all be friends, or exhorting us all to carry on and not give up in any number of lyrical cliches possible, are out. And joke entries, or anything bordering on cheesy, are an absolute no-no. The artist should already have record deals, some sort of decent back catalogue, and a plan for the future beyond this show and Eurovision itself. One advantage of a national selection that is somewhat lost in an internal one is that the song and artist can be tested in a competitive live TV performance. I Wrote a Song is perfect for the radio and streaming services, but it doesn't work as well live, which is a problem we see at Eurovision every single year. Austria was a big fan favourite in 2022, and yet they failed to make it out of their semi-final for the very same reason. One lesson from 2023 that can be applied to both an internal and a national selection is not to have an overemphasis on radio-friendly songs. While there's no problem with radio-friendly songs at Eurovision per se, indeed Spaceman was as such, for example, that criteria shouldn't be at the expense of a live-friendly song. Whatever song is chosen should be a showcase song, and Spaceman is a perfect example of that. When the labels approached Sam Ryder and asked what kind of music he could write, he came up with Spaceman to answer that question. It was a song specifically written to show the best of himself, his style, and his capabilities. So when it came to trying to impress 160 million people, his song did exactly that. I Wrote a Song, on the other hand, while a very credible song, wasn't really a showcase song. Yes, May made some changes to make it better for Eurovision, and she was right to do so, but at its heart, it was essentially a song written for the radio and streaming services. It was never intended to blow anyone's socks off. If the BBC do stick with an internal selection, there is one other thing they need to have learned from Liverpool. In the weeks prior to the announcement of May Muller as our entrance, the mess pit that is the internet was awash with rumours and speculation over the potential artist. Much of the initial negativity over May's selection was driven by disappointment about it not being X, Y, or Z. Therefore, ideally, the BBC should announce the artist earlier, even if the song comes later, rather than leaving both to the last possible moment. So, in a nutshell, what should the UK do for Eurovision 2024? Ideally, keep tap music involved in some capacity. But a national final, similar to Finland's UMK, could be another avenue. But whether it be via an internal or a national selection, it needs to be a showcase song that can stand out as a live performance. That, combined with impressive staging and a powerful performance, and the UK should be well on the way to becoming a Eurovision powerhouse once again.